Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Founders Table. This podcast is focused on conversations with current founders to deconstruct their lessons and tactics in order to help you build your own startup. If you like this podcast, don't forget to rate and subscribe in your podcast app. This will keep you up to date on latest episodes, as well as help others find out about the show. Today, my guest is Noah Palansky, founder of Taiv, a digital signage solution that uses AI to automatically switch between cable and custom streaming channels. Taiv is used in restaurants and other venues to serve custom ads and content during commercial breaks. Prior to Taiv, Noah worked marketing at a software company and started a foundation to help kids affected by cancer after losing his mom to a rare form of cancer as a teenager. In today's episode, we talk about Noah's aha moment for Taiv while watching a hockey game in a bar, fundraising and keeping the lights on during COVID, and finding co-founders with a little help from your spouse. And now, without any further ado, I give you Noah. Noah, welcome to Founders Table. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin.
So I want to start with the origin stories of Taiv. How did you get started? How did you know this was what you wanted to build?
So I was sitting in a bar. I think that's where most good stories start. And I was watching a hockey game. Um, and I noticed when it came to commercial break, my wife actually pointed out that they hired a DJ, and the DJ was just there to switch the input on the TV, show off drink specials and events, and play some promos for their own beer that they have on tap. Um, and I just saw that and thought that that was a really bad solution to a really important problem. And the problem was that, these bars and restaurants are not selling as much of their products as they should. They don't have good channels to promote them. And they have a really valuable ad space. But the solution was bad. And most bars didn't want to or couldn't afford to pay a couple $100 a night for a DJ. And I thought, okay, what if we use AI to automate that? What if we make it so that we're always showing the best possible content and the best possible, most relevant advertisements on every TV automatically? And so that was kind of the idea for the company.
Got it. And what was the process between kind of having that idea and actually building enough conviction to start a company around it?
It sat for a while. So I was kind of messing around with a different project at the time with one of who is now my co-founders, Jordan. But we were just kind of messing around in school and building different things. And this seemed like an overly ambitious thing to build. Like we had to build our own hardware, software, firmware, build our own AI model from scratch. And originally it just seemed overwhelming. And we were trying to stick more in the traditional SaaS space, building scheduling software and stuff. But we kind of had this thesis that sometimes building in a harder to build area is an easy way to find a solution that most people have maybe thought of, but nobody's built yet. And so we just had this thesis that if we spent 6 months and built a really hard product or a year, we would be able to build something that's never existed before, and then through that gain a competitive advantage and grow really quickly. And it took closer to 2 years to build out an MVP, but the thesis was right. Once we had it, we were the only product in the space, and it was really easy to gain momentum really quickly.
Got it. And is that still the case today? Do you have any other common competitors, or are you guys still kind of unique in your market?
We're pretty much the only ones. There's one or two small companies that have kind of just started to try and do something similar in the space. But we're the only ones with meaningful scale right now.
Got it. And so after you built your prototype, what happened next? How did you get your first customer?
So the first customer was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. We were going door to door, me and my co-founder, literally going door to door trying to sign people up. And this was in the middle of summer in Miami. So it was a terrible time to be doing this. But yeah, we just knocked on doors and we said, hey, we're just starting something new. We have a dream. Here's how we think, your entertainment system should work. Will you take a shot on us? And a lot of people said no, and a couple people said yes. And the ones who said yes are still customers today, years later. Some of our best customers, and we still talk to them all the time.
And when you were trying to sell these sets, did you have advertisers that wanted to advertise, or was it more just once we get the installation going, we'll find something along the way?
We had that chicken and egg problem. We had like an extreme version of it. So like we would go and we would sign up a bar and they would sign the paperwork and then we would immediately go door to door in all the businesses next to the bar and say, hey, these guys just signed. Do you want to run ads on the TVs? And like that was our model for the first like 6 months is like go out there, convince a bar to sign up, and then tell everybody that they could advertise at the bar. And it actually worked. Like people were only spending like 100, $200 a month. Like it wasn't big money, but it was enough to validate the idea. And then as we got 50, 100, 150 locations, 500, 750, we kept growing the number. We started being able to talk to bigger and bigger brands and advertisers and eventually didn't need to go to those small local ones anymore. That's kind of how we got off the ground.
And I would imagine that, during your early years of kind of doing these installations yourself, um, was it just the two of you? Did you have a team or, uh, yeah, what was the setup?
We had a small team. So I have two co-founders, tech side and Avi on the business side. And then early days, I think we had one engineer and then we hired one salesperson a little later on. So there were like four or five of us, just a lot of hustle. And then over time, we built the team out. Like as we raised more money, as we got more revenue, we were able to bring on some really amazing people. And now we have about 25 people on the team.
At what point did you feel like you had enough where you wanted to start fundraising? And was that always the plan? Like, did you go into this business thinking, we're gonna, build a VC funded business and go big? Like, how did it come about?
Yeah, that was always the plan for us. We've always felt like we had, one of those go big or die trying kind of businesses. Um, just because there's such strong network effects here, where like we work with the biggest brands selling ads in bars and restaurants, and they don't want to spend if we have 50 or 100 locations. They want to buy by the thousands. And the bigger that base gets, the more attractive it is to advertisers, the more money we make on ads, the more attractive it is to restaurants because we give them a rev share on it. So we always knew we needed big scale. We always knew that the hardware would be expensive. And so VC funding was like really the only viable option, even in the early days. Um, but we meaningfully underestimated how hard it would be to fundraise. Like we thought that we would just go out there with like an idea and people would be writing us checks, and that's not how it works in the real world. Um, so, we tried when we had an idea and we raised like 50K from friends. And then we went and we built a couple prototypes, got a dozen or so test locations, went and raised a little more and kind of just rinse and repeat. And then went through Y Combinator eventually, which was a big catalyst for raising money. Um, but it's always hard. Even today, it's hard. Um, just because you're asking for so much money. And even if we have a lot of conviction that we can turn it into a real big business and we do have the track record to do it, it's always hard to go and convince people to give you money to do it. And I think anyone who says it isn't is, fabricating a little bit.
Yeah, fundraising is tough, especially nowadays. Um, so I guess you mentioned going through Y Combinator. Was that something? How did that? What was the calculus of applying? Is that something you uh, planned on going through? And how did it change the trajectory of your startup? If it, yeah, what impact did it have?
Yeah, it was something that I'm really grateful we had the chance to do. And it's something I always wanted to do and something I'd encourage others to do. Like we were an out of market company and still are. We're operating in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And so there isn't really a strong founder network here. There isn't really a VC network here. And so we always viewed it as a way to just tap into the ecosystem and really build a good network out there in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And so, we applied. I think we got in on our third try. We got rejected twice and then accepted on the third try. Um, and yeah, it totally changed the trajectory of our company. Not necessarily from like, well, even from a growth perspective. Like it really changed our mindset. We went into it as like small thinking, you know, prairie Canadians, and we came out of it thinking like, how do we build this into a $10 billion company? And I think that mind shift was important. And then we also came out of it with the networking connections and knowledge to go and raise the money we needed to actually execute.
Um, tell me a little bit about your co-founders. So, how did you guys meet, and what did it take to get everyone on board for starting the business?
So I met Jordan in school. Um, my wife was flying on a plane, like she was a varsity athlete at the time. So she was flying on a plane next to a guy and telling him about how her boyfriend had this crazy idea for a company. And the guy was super interested. And he was like, I want to meet this guy. And I went for coffee with him. And he actually had his own company. He wasn't a good fit, but he said, you know what? I have a really good friend who has been thinking about doing the same thing. You guys should connect. And so he connected us. And then I went for coffee with Jordan and pitched him on the idea. And he was into it. And then we like almost immediately both decided to like drop out of school and pursue this full time. It was actually a very like impulsive decision. I think we worked together for like a semester, kind of like messing around before we decided to just lean in. And we just hit it off from day one and have ever since. This was like almost 5 years ago now. Um, Avi, I also met through my wife. So she was at, yeah, I know. She both came up with the idea for the company and connected me to my two partners. Um, so very
She's the
credited, but
keeper. That's amazing. Yeah.
definitely. Um, so yeah, she was at a business event in the city and met a guy who wanted to start a company again on the sales side. He was working selling to restaurants, selling SaaS to restaurants, and wanted to start out his own company, but didn't have any technical knowledge and just had all the sales experience and was looking for something. And she, kind of hyped up what we were doing, and I ended up meeting with him. He took me for lunch, and we hit it off also. And with both of them, it wasn't really about convincing them to join. It was more just like figuring out if we were the right fit to do it together. Like it was almost like dating, where we had to figure out if we were a good fit for each other and people we wanted to work with and really spend a lot of our time with. But we hit it off, and we had really complementary skill sets and still get along great with both of them.
I think, I've talked to a lot of founders, a lot of them who might, also not live in the valley and are looking for like co-founders. And it's usually kind of what you said. It's a dating experience where you meet person after person to try to figure out if this is somebody you want to spend, 5 to 10 years of your life with. It sounds like, for the two co-founders that you've met through your wife, they've both been like really good fits, and you guys are still together today. Were you talking to a lot of other people as well? And I know you mentioned you hit it off, but was there anything specific during those moments that gave you the confidence that these were the right people?
Yeah, I think the big thing was that we had a very similar worldview and we had a very similar like goal. So all three of us wanted to do something big, and we knew that it would take a while, and we had the patience to see it through. Which I think is actually rarer than it sounds amongst founders. Like we went into this and said, look, this could take 10 years. Are you willing to put 10 years of your life into this? If it doesn't go well, are you okay spending 10 years of your life working your ass off for nothing? And all three of us said yes. And then it was, okay, how big do you want to build this and why? And we all said huge, because we want to leave a legacy. And it was less about the actual problem space, and it was more about, we're very aligned on like the outcomes we wanted to achieve. And so we were willing to kind of go through that process together of figuring out what to build. And then we all just had really complementary skill sets. Like Avi was an expert at sales, and I knew nothing about it at the time. And I knew how to like, spin up a business and recruit people and handle the finance and operations. And Jordan was really, really good technically. And so it was a good match, all three of us. There were other people too that I talked to, and even a couple that we started working together. And there were like 3 or 4 other people who we kind of worked with for a few months, and it just wasn't a good fit. And for one reason or another, the skills weren't complementary, or we realized that we wanted different things long term. It just didn't work out. But fortunately, like I stay in touch with all of them, and we're still friends to this day. And no hard feelings at all. It just wasn't a good fit to start a company together.
Yeah, it's there's so much of it that involves in like timing and where people are in their respective stages in life. Um, for I guess the early days, when you were getting the company off of the ground, fundraising, do you remember kind of what your early milestones were? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to accomplish, and how did things go?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, our first milestone was like so funny. Being able to see a video feed in our software. So we had to build like hardware and firmware to actually take a video input and be able to like view it and process it. And that sounds trivial, but it was really difficult, especially to do it like losslessly in real time. And so I remember like after like months of working on this, we finally finished the drivers that let us do this. And we just went out for beers to celebrate. Like the first thing we did was we connected it to like a YouTube video and watched the YouTube video. And the second thing we did was make it do spins on the screen. And then we left it spinning and went out for beers to celebrate. And that was like months of work. And then um, getting an ad to show properly the first time was a huge celebration. And then signing up our first customer, deploying in our first customer. It went terribly. They had so many issues. We actually turned all of their screens green and continued to do it like every 24 to 48 hours without fail. Every screen in the business would turn green, and we would have to like go and unplug our hardware and fix it. And we eventually solved that by buying a smart plug so we could unplug our hardware remotely. Um, but like you just cross off the milestones, and there's a finite number of problems, and we just kept going after them one after a time until the product worked, and we kept signing up more and more customers, and um, eventually it didn't take too long. They were quite happy, and fortunately, we're working with most of them still today.
Nice. When you think back to those early days, or even now, are there any either like particular use cases or like venues or just that stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm surprised a lot of the time at some of the use cases people have for this. So, like the obvious fit in my mind was bars and restaurants, right? Like they have sometimes hundreds of TVs. They have no way of controlling what gets shown in their venue. They have no way of controlling the audio system. And we would come in and say, hey, we can automate everything. We'll show the right content to the right person at the right time. We'll let you show drink specials and events. We will show relevant ads for Pepsi and Bacardi and big brands that we work with, and we'll share some of that revenue with you. So you're going to make money showing those ads. We'll give you free streaming content, a ton of automation, let you centralize all your control. Like it was such a strong pitch. And that seemed really obvious. But, we've had now customers who are car dealerships and they want it for their waiting room because they want more control over what gets shown and they want to really customize that experience. We have customers who are pet stores because they want it to be all brand safe and they don't like how normal TV shows inappropriate content. So they work with us and we have a pets channel that we license ourselves and we show really relevant pets content in there. And we have rec centers and like just such a wide variety of customers. And every time we sign a new one, it really surprises me.
Do you ever worry about going wide versus going deep? Are there any? It sounds like you serve like a wide range of customers, but was there any consideration of like if you would focus on a sector or just have customers come in the same way?
We try to focus very tightly in a geo. So we're only in 9 cities today, even though we have almost 800 locations. 9 cities, 5 states, and we try to build significant mass in each market before moving on to the next one. And we do focus relatively tightly in sectors as well. Like the vast majority of our customers are restaurants and bars. And whenever we go after a new sector, we try to be very intentional with it. We only do it if it's a sector where we have conviction that we can very quickly get meaningful scale. Been forced to do it that way because when advertisers are buying their product, they want to buy certain demographics and they want to buy them at scale. And so nobody's really interested in 15 assorted venues across the country, but 1,000 that reach the same type of people in a certain number of cities is very interesting. So it's kept us disciplined.
Makes sense. And I was looking over your website, and it looks like that one of your taglines is like making real world ads more like digital ads, where you actually have the data to kind of like show impact. And I'm curious, like what does that kind of look like if someone were to sign up with you today as an advertiser or as a venue? What kind of information do I have access to that I normally wouldn't have if it was just a traditional TV ad?
Yeah, we try to be very careful because I think it's a fine line between providing a really good advertiser experience and giving them the data they need to make decisions and infringing on people's personal privacy. And so we, first of all, anonymize absolutely all the data that we have and aggregate it, and we'll only share it if we have enough data that it can be aggregated and anonymized. But we have access to some really cool data. So, for example, we can generally correlate sales on premise with whether an ad's being shown. And so we can run an A/B test where we're advertising a Pepsi product in one bar or in 500 bars, and we're not advertising it in another. And then we look at the point of sale records and we can actually correlate how did that cause a shift in consumer behavior? Did people order more Pepsi when the ad was showing, and what times of the day and what demographics were most impacted by it? because we can correlate it with data we have from mobile phones about what types of people go to the bars at different times of day, what their ages are, what their genders are, what their interests are. And so we end up with a really interesting intersected data where we can say, okay, we notice that, 25 to 30-year-old men who like football are the most impacted by Pepsi's ads. And so going forward, we should show ads in bars that serve Pepsi that have the highest index for that demographic. And we can run that as a test and see if it works. Um, and so we can really refine it. We can also do things like track, hey, do people who are exposed to this ad more likely to visit a certain location? So we've done that for, an amusement park, for example. If they want to see, hey, does advertising actually draw a crowd? We can correlate that, again, off mobile phones. And then we can do the same for like online sales. We can say, hey, if I was exposed to this ad, am I more likely to actually make a purchase? And we can track it through people's phones. But it's all anonymized, and so we can't tell you like, hey, Kevin, you led to this specific sale, but we can tell you that as a population, people were this much more likely to purchase your product, which led to this much higher of an ROI.
Got it. And how does the phone get tied into this? So I understand you have the kind of the TV hardware product, but where does the phone data come in?
So we have a TV hardware product, and we have integrations with point of sale systems. And we have a bunch of first party data from the bar owners as well. So they tell us a lot about their demographics. But separately, we can geofence every bar. And there's providers out there that will sell us anonymized phone data about who goes into and leaves those bars and give us timestamps. And so it's essentially just a giant data dump that we can sort through in SQL, and we can cross reference when the ad played with who we know was in the bar at the time with the point of sale records to build an audience.
Got it. That makes sense. I want to go back to, we talked about fundraising briefly in the beginning, and fundraising can be tough. And how was your fundraising experience?
I feel like I have been on both sides of the spectrum. So at the beginning, it was very tough. Um, we were building like essentially a hard tech product. We had to build hardware, software, firmware, AI, and we, hadn't done it yet, and it was impossible to fundraise. And then we built a proof of concept. We had some traction, and it became very easy to fundraise. And then COVID hit, and every location we had shut down. And overnight, we lost all of our appeal to the fundraising market. It went from, we were having partnership meetings. We had like verbal commitments. Like we had some really great funds who wanted to come in to every fund backed out all at once. And we had no fundraising prospects whatsoever, except for a couple early investors who believed in us and wanted to double down. And then we went out of that, coming out of COVID, we flew down to Miami and just saw some incredible traction and really like launched the business out of the cannon. And it was right in that like 2020, 2021 fundraising boom. And it was back to the hottest market I've ever seen where, we had more access to capital than we could ever realistically want. And we had great funds who wanted to invest. And so I feel like we've really been on both sides of it. We've been fortunate enough that we've had really strong traction since then. And so we have generally been able to raise the money we want on good terms from great investors. But I think it's a journey, and it's no one moment in time is it consistent to another. And so we've had very easy fundraisers and very difficult ones.
When you're fundraising, are there any specific kind of like strategies or like qualities that you look for in investors?
Yeah, I try to find people who genuinely understand the business and like what we're doing because of what we're doing, not because of the market validation. So like I try not to find investors who look at other investors for their signals. Primarily at least. I just find there are good investors like that, but the best investors make their own decisions and have their own conviction. And then I look for people who have a lot of subject matter expertise and relevant network, relevant connections, can help us put together future rounds, can make intros in the space. Like to me, the best investors have done it before. And then I love when former founders invest. Like I would say like half of our investment or a third of our investment to date has been expats and exited founders. And I think that's rare, and it's something we've done intentionally because they're just so helpful and they have so much value and they really want to make an impact. And that's been one of the best decisions we've made.
Yeah, it's nothing like having somebody that has essentially been in your seat and gone through the whole process before.
Yeah.
So right now, in terms of where the company is today, what what are your milestones? What is next, kind of on the road map?
So the big ones for us, we're approaching 1,000 locations, which will be a big one for us. Um, we're approaching profitability as well, which is a really exciting milestone for us. Um, Not because we plan to stop raising money and stop growing as quickly as we are, but it's just nice having that optionality and that control to choose when you raise and how you raise. And then just continuing to expand and grow. Like we want to go from 9 cities to nationally in the next couple of years and really take over this market and make an even bigger footprint.
Right now, for the markets that you are in, what has been working in terms of when you go into sales? Um, do you at this point do you have a repeatable sales motion? And if so, it's like what's been effective?
Yeah, we do. So calling and emailing has been great for us. Trade shows have been pretty good as well. But referrals have always been our favorite and our best channel. Like we have a lot of really happy customers, and just shooting them a text and saying, "Hey, would you mind like telling your friends about this?" Or do you know anyone who'd be interested? Always leads to good results for us. And so that's our favorite way to get new business because it means that we're actually making people happy. But we get good responses for pretty much every channel. Like we have an interesting product that it's not obvious and it's not something people are actively looking for. So we've had trouble doing like traditional marketing. Um, but as soon as we can explain what we do in the value prop, people are really excited by it.
Are there any common objections that people bring up?
We get this seems too good to be true a lot. So
Hmm.
people always think that we're trying to rip them off, which is a funny one to deal with because we tell them, hey, we want to pay you every month. We want to give you this control. We want to give you all this tech. And I go say, what's the catch? No, there's no catch. Okay, you're going to steal my credit card. No, we don't even need your credit card. Um, but that's the common one we have to deal with. Um, Sports bar owners are surprisingly concerned about their TVs. Like if they have an outage on their TVs or any issues, people just walk out of their business. And so it's a very sensitive area to touch. And so people want to make sure we're not going to mess anything up. And a lot of times they'll go and visit a customer or ask for a reference or, really try and feel out whether we can do what we say we can before they work with us, but we can usually win them over.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I think the TV in a sports bar is kind of like the lifeblood, the where everyone gathers.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like this tiny little niche that touches like every person in the country. Like almost every person goes to bars or restaurants at least once in a while. Um, but how many people build technology for the TVs in the bars and the restaurants? Like there's only a few of us. So it feels like we're building for a very small space that impacts every person on the planet.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Until I saw, yeah, I don't know any other company that directly works with, well, tech or bars in the same ways you guys do. Um, you talked about COVID, and I would imagine COVID was a pretty dark time, especially for your business. Um, what was that? I guess, how did you end up going through it? Did you have any business at the time, or were you just kind of holding on until sanctions were kind of lifted? But what was the process of getting through COVID?
Yeah, it was tough. We had about 50 customers at the time, but we were right in the middle of a fundraise. Like I remember we literally pitched a fund, pitched like the whole managing partnership. They said, "Yeah, this sounds great. I think we're going to probably do this." And then the NFL, NBA, and NHL all announced that they were postponing seasons. And then I got a call the next day, and they said we're out. And even though we only had like 50 locations at the time, like it just completely killed our momentum. So it was tough, and we pivoted business models during it, and we kind of going into COVID, we charged bars and restaurants to show their own drink specials, their own events, have this automation. And during COVID, we said, if bars and restaurants can never afford discretionary expenses again, how can we make this still a good value for them? And how can we help them recover from the pandemic? And we said, okay, what if we pay them every month? What if we turn, instead of a cost item, we turn this into a revenue line item and we actually pay them a new source of income and help them recover? Um, and pivoted into this whole ad supported model. And then we spent the pandemic building up the tech for it, really scaling all of our supply chain and manufacturing and building this business. Um, and then right as the pandemic wound up, right in like March of 2021, when Florida and Texas reopened, we flew down there from Canada and lived there for 9 months, going door to door, signing up early customers. Um, and, at the time we had 6 months of cash in the bank. Like we knew that we were going to fly down there and this was either going to work or if the company was going to go under. But we all believed in it, and we decided that it's better to go out on a bang and really give it your best shot than to slowly die trying to do something that never works. And so we put every dollar we had into that last push, and it worked. And we were able to build sales momentum and coupled that with a great fundraising environment and raised enough money to turn the business around. And then we've been growing quickly ever since.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Are you today, are you still based off in Canada, or uh, where are you located now?
Yeah, we're based in Canada. 21 out of our 25 employees work here in Winnipeg, which is a small out of market tech city. Um, and we feel like we're helping build the ecosystem because this isn't a place where people come thinking about starting startups. They don't know much about it. Um, there isn't really that culture, but I feel like it's important to bring it here and to show the people of the city how big an impact they can make by doing something they believe in. And we really promote not just in our company, but in the whole ecosystem, the idea of starting something big and following your dreams and jumping into a business. And we've seen so many people that we work with or that we know go out and start new companies because of what we're doing or in part because of what we're doing. And it's a really good feeling knowing that we're starting to build a new ecosystem.
Speaking of ecosystems, so I know one thing that YC stresses a lot on is they highly encourage you to move down to San Francisco. Um, I guess, you mentioned yourself that Winnipeg is kind of an out of market city for doing entrepreneurship. Um, at any point, did you consider, moving down to the Bay, or, what gave you the conviction that you could build a thriving business in Canada?
Yeah, we definitely did. I remember during YC, we were at there was an event. We were at someone's pool, and Eric Mijakowski was one of our partners and the founder of Pebble, and now a friend, sat down with me and he said, "Noah, you guys need to move to San Francisco. I was from Toronto. I was a Canadian. I get it, but you need to move down here." Um, and we really weighed his advice seriously. Like this is a guy we did and still do look up to a lot. And so him saying that really made an impact. And we actually did plan to move the company. And then because of the pandemic, we didn't. And I think it's one of the best decisions we ever made. Um, there are definitely advantages to moving to the Bay Area. It's a lot easier to fundraise. It's easier to get tech customers. It's easier to find acquirers. But on the flip side, um, I think there's a lot of noise, and I think that it's very easy to get caught up in what's trending and what everybody's talking about when you're down in such a tight ecosystem, and to really lose touch with your customer and the reason why you're building. And so, by being further away, we've really been able to focus in and spend a lot of time with our customers. We've been able to recruit unbelievable people who would never move to San Francisco and would have never been able to work there, and really hit above our class in terms of the talent we've been able to attract and what we've been able to accomplish. And ultimately, I think we've built a business that fundamentally couldn't succeed if it was built in a big tech ecosystem.
Uh, yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like you guys have built up quite a great business down in Winnipeg. Um, you mentioned in the very beginning that, this Taiv was something that in college or in school, you decided this was a good idea and that you would drop out to work on this business. Have you ever, I guess, has entrepreneurship always been something you knew you wanted to do? Or how did you kind of get into the mindset of, I want to build my own business?
I wanted to do. I remember when I was a kid, everyone would say, "What did you want to do when you grow up?" And I would say, "I want to be an entrepreneur." Um, Originally, I wasn't sure how to do it. I'm still not sure how to do it, the best path, but um, I wasn't sure if I should get a technical background or a business background. That was my big decision growing up. And I originally went into business and I did 2 years of a business degree. I got an internship and it turned into um, a marketing role where I was head of marketing at a small company here in Winnipeg. And I learned a lot and I ran that team for a year, but I still felt like I needed the technical background in order to actually know what I was doing. And so I went back to school and got most of a technical degree and dropped out again in my second semester. I dropped out for the second time. Um, or sorry, my last semester, I dropped out for the second time. Um, and I think that unique combination of skills has been really helpful, like understanding both the business and the technical because they complement each other and they've both been really valuable as I built a business.
I can imagine. I guess as the business has matured, How have you seen your role change, if any?
Um, our goal has always been the same. We want to build something massive. We want to build a huge company. Um, we want to have a big exit, but not for the money, but for the impact and the legacy it leaves. And because we genuinely believe that we can help all these small business owners. We have a product that actually drives sales to small businesses. We help them make money. We pay them every month, and we want that to reach as many people as possible.
Do you find that your day-to-day job has changed over time?
Definitely. At the beginning, I was hands-on. I was writing code, um, and then I became a little bit higher level where I wasn't writing code, but I was very involved with the strategizing, and I was doing all the sales. And then now it's a much more strategic role. My job is to make sure that every person is doing the right thing and that we have the right people in the right roles in the company. And I spend a lot of my time just talking to people internally, understanding their challenges, understanding the roadblocks they're hitting, and helping them get unblocked. And I like to think that I jump into whatever is the hardest problem in that moment for the company and help people solve it, and help make sure our leadership team is doing the right thing. But it continues to evolve over time.
If you look back at your time so far, is there anything that you feel like you guys did right, or like just either by timing or execution, but things that went well, or other things that you wish you might have avoided, or think better again the next time you do?
Yeah, I think on the good side, we've always been really big proponents of launch early and launch with a terrible MVP and then iterate it. And if you can really hone in on that customer value, they're going to be willing to put up with a product that isn't perfect in order to get the value that you bring. And so, like, our first versions of our product hardly worked, but they did work a little bit, and they were a lot better than the alternative. And based on that feedback, we built a completely different product than what we would have built if we did it in a vacuum. So I've always been an advocate of, like, you should launch a product within weeks to months at the long end, and that's worked really well for us. Uh, I think most of the mistakes we've made I attribute to not launching fast enough or not getting enough user experience, user feedback. And there's lots of examples where we thought we knew our users better than we did, and we built something out too thoroughly and launched it, and it was the wrong thing to build. Um, yeah,
I think, there's very few constants when it comes to startups, but I think almost 100% of the time when I've talked to a founder, that if there's anything they've regretted, it's usually something along the lines of should have talked to my customer more. Um, and same in my end as well. It's yeah, you can never really go wrong with talking to customers, but also making sure that you are actually, there's a lot of ways of communicating with people where you're not actually talking.
yeah. Like, I can give you an anecdote.
Please.
We had this big problem where we would like false positives. So our system would like think it was an intermission or something when it wasn't, and it would kick in and it would start showing ads during like a football game or something. That was obviously like a huge problem at the time. And so we asked like our YC partners, hey, what should we do about this? And one of them had the idea, you guys should build this physical button, like a big, a big button that the bartender can just smash and it'll, send you a text and override it. And we thought that was an awesome idea. And like I keep one on my desk as a reminder. Like I literally have one here as a reminder about this. And so we built it and we deployed like hundreds of these, and they work and they were cool. And they're still a really cool button. You can like wire it up to do anything you want. It's totally wireless, whatever, aside from the power. Um, and years later, someone was like, why don't we just add a disable button into the software? And obviously that was the answer. Like that was the obvious solution this whole time. Like every bartender has a phone, they have tablets. Like it's very easy for them to load up our software. They already have it open, but add a button that says disable. But until we talked to our customers, we just assumed that this was the answer, and we built completely the wrong thing. So I keep this on my desk as a reminder that we need to focus on what the customers want, not what we think they want.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, the button it's a badass button.
It's super satisfying to hit too.
Do you, yeah, I guess, do you use it for is it hooked up to anything, or is it more as a reminder?
This one's a reminder, but they can be hooked up to anything. Um, as a little hack project, I did buy like a big like red like police light and some speakers, and I think eventually I'm gonna like make it like play some music and like do a light show or whatever when you hit it. But um, no, this one's just a reminder.
Yeah. I guess the next one is hit it when you hit your next milestone.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, we're getting close to the end of the show, and I generally like to end the show with a set of common closing questions that I ask all my guests. And the first one is, if you were to give advice to founders starting a business today, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think the biggest advice I would give is to be prepared to do it for the long run. Everybody goes into a startup with a short-term mindset and assuming that they're going to be that outlier that starts it and it's an overnight success. But those outliers don't exist. If you look at the most successful companies to have ever started, they were an overnight success that took 10 years in the making. And you have to go in prepared to run that marathon. You have to be prepared to spend 3, 5 more years iterating and trying to find product market fit, and then another 3 or 5 years executing to get the next exit. And if you're not prepared to do all of that, this probably isn't the career path for you.
Things always take longer than you think, especially those overnight successes that you see. That now, speaking of success, when you think of success, does anybody come to mind?
Yeah, for me, I think the most successful people are the ones who've made the biggest philanthropic impact on the world. Um, so, I mean, Bill and Melissa Gates are obviously a huge inspiration in that regard. And I think they're a great example of how you can be successful, but you can use that success to better the world. Um, but I also like to look on a local scale. And there's a lot of people I really look up to here in Winnipeg or in Canada who, on a smaller scale, have been successful and sold a company, but then they've used the proceeds of that company to better the world, or they've embedded it into their company's core mission. And I just feel like that's so important. Like, it's not about winning with the most number of points and selling for the largest amount of dollars. It's about making as big an impact as you can on the world and really helping improve it.
Lucy, how do you recharge?
So it's a weird one. I like to do things that make me uncomfortable. Um, so uncomfortable so that I can't think about work and it has to take my mind off of it. So I do a lot of like hard physical labor. Like I built a deck last month from scratch. I built an arcade machine a couple years ago. Yesterday, I flew a plane for the first time. Um, I ran a half marathon a couple years ago. I ran a race in like negative 40 degrees Celsius. Like I just like to do things that um, are terrible in the moment because it forces you to pull your head out of the clouds and really be present in the moment and really thoughtful and mindful.
Yeah, especially as a startup founder, you can be in the state of never stopping to obsess over your business, and it can take extreme things to get your head out of that.
And I was reading something really interesting where they talked about how burnout for a lot of like higher performing people is when you can't dissociate from work. So like you don't realize it, but burnout is when, when you're trying not to work, you're thinking about work. And when you're trying to work, you can't focus on work. And I think a lot of founders get in that mindset unknowingly because they're so passionate about what they're doing. And so forcing yourself out of that mindset, I find is a really good way to reset.
Absolutely. And, it makes for some really good memories down the line. It's the what, type 1 fun, type 2 fun. Type 2 fun is the ones that are good when you think back to it, but in the moment is very excruciating. But
I love that
uh,
framework.
next question. Are there any recent small investments that you've made in the last year that have had an outsized impact on your life?
Yeah. Um, I've been trying to get better at prioritizing the important and urgent stuff and letting things intentionally slip through the cracks. I used to have a mindset that I could handle everything. And over time, I've just realized it isn't possible. So I delegate what I can, I take on the most important stuff, and then I'm just at peace with not getting everything done, um, which has been really good for me mentally. Um, on a bigger scale, I reorganized all my company's meetings a while ago so that everyone meets on Monday mornings, which sounds terrible because you're in meetings until noon. But by the end of that afternoon, everyone is aligned and on the same page, and you don't have any more internal meetings for the rest of the week, and everyone can just focus on their job. And that's just been a huge boost in productivity and happiness and alignment.
You, yeah, get all the meetings out of the way on the first day of the week. Um, are there ever any follow-ups? Like, what if you have a meeting and things are not quite resolved? Do you have meetings later in the week, or do you punt it to the next Monday?
Ad hoc is okay. So if something comes up and we need to deal with it, we can do a follow up, or if we have to meet with a client or something, that's fine. But the idea is all these departmental meetings, right? So our leadership meeting is first thing in the morning, Monday. And then right out of that leadership meeting, each person meets with their individual team and they set their team strategy for a week based on what we talked about in the leadership meeting. And then each team disseminates that information down until everyone in the company has had one or more meetings, knows exactly what the goals are for the week, knows exactly what they need to focus on for the week. Um, and you can just go and hit the ground running. And it ends with like a company-wide stand-up at 10:45 a.m. where everyone's already been briefed, everyone already knows what we're doing, they already know what's going on and what our goals are. We can talk really high-level strategy for the week.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I used to be at Amazon, and we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday meetings. That was not like that. Anyways, last question. Ask and offer. Is there anything you would ask of my audience, or any offers you would like to make?
Yeah, as far as asking, we're launching a new product. It's in beta right now. It's called Taiv, and the idea is that we want to make it as easy to add advertising to your product as it is to monetize with Stripe. So 2 lines of code, and we handle absolutely everything. And my ask is that if you know anyone who has a product that could benefit from this, or you have a product that could benefit from this, shoot me a note, and I'd just love to chat through it. And at a bare minimum, we'll give you some help for free and my advice and my perspective on it, and we might be able to work together. So that's anything from like a tablet in an Uber to a point of sale system with a screen to an app. As long as you're reaching thousands or millions of people, and you think that there's a market to sell ads on it, I'd love to chat about it. And then as far as offers go, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify for Taiv X, you don't need necessarily a TV set, a physical TV set. No. This is any product.
Absolutely any product. So a lot of founders I've talked to say something like, and we'll add advertising and scale. It's one of the slides at their pitch deck, and they talk about how they're going to make all this money advertising. But in practice, it's your Series C, your Series D, you have massive revenue, and it's just never a priority because it's a totally different business model. You got to go build relationships, figure it out. You got to add product work. You got to go sign a bunch of agreements. You don't know if it's going to work. And even if it does work, it's generally regarded as a lower quality revenue than SaaS revenue. So a lot of people don't want it. And so we're kind of flipping the script and just saying, hey, we'll take care of all that. We already have all the infrastructure. We have all the relationships. We have all the knowledge. We'll set it all up for you. All you got to do is add 2 lines of code if you want to make a little extra money. And I think it's a really good offer.
Yeah, and what the form factor of this would be like a website, a mobile app, any of the above?
Yeah, mobile app or screens in the physical world. Physical world screens are really like our bread and butter. So, if you have a screen that reaches people through your product in any way, we can uniquely monetize it. If you have a website or an app, we can help, but there's also good solutions out there. There's Google AdSense and others, and DoubleClick and stuff that I think do a pretty good job of this. And we're happy to talk through it and ultimately point you in the right direction if one of those can help. But if you have screens in the real world, there really isn't anything like this out there, and we can uniquely help turn that on for you.
And then you were going to get into the offer.
Yeah, so I got 2 offers. If you have a product and you want to reach people in bars or restaurants or other businesses, and what I said sounds interesting, you want to run an experiment with us, we'll give you 50% off your first campaign. Just mention the podcast. And separately, if you know anyone who owns a restaurant or bar and might be interested in our free service, let me know, send them our way, and we will send you an awesome swag bag worth about $200.
All right. Well, that sounds super compelling. I don't know if, my house counts as a high traffic place, but we do have a video display Alexa that we, host a potluck from time to time.
Love it. Get it on our system.
All right. Well, Nora, thank you so much for taking the time today, and I learned a ton. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. This is fun.
Hey, just one more thing before you go. Thanks for listening to this episode of Founders Table. If you like the show, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also consider giving us a rating, as it helps others find the podcast. You can find all episodes as well as more information about the show at founderstable.co. Until next time, stay hungry.